It is April 17th, 2011, and I am Carson O'Brien, and I have the privilege of talking with GACS founder and chancellor Jesse Long, who also happens to be my granddaddy, about what it was like to be a child during the Great Depression, which covered the years from 1929 to 1941. Granddaddy was born in 1932 in the rural area of Jackson County, Tennessee. Thank you very much for taking the time to share some of your experience with me. Okay, talk about your family. Did you have brothers and sisters? What were your mother and father doing for work?
I had an older brother and an older sister. My mom and dad were, in my early days, my dad had a job in Old Hickory, Tennessee, working for DuPont, but the Depression came on and workers were laid off, so he went back to the farm, farmed his father's farm. My mom was a homemaker for a while, and then the latter part of the time we lived in Tennessee, she was a school teacher.
Okay, and what about, do you have siblings?
Older brother and older sister.
Okay, and what type of house did you live in, and what were the living conditions like?
Type of house was wood siding, three rooms, no electricity, no running water. The heat was a fireplace. My mom cooked on a cast iron stove, which meant that I and my younger brother had to bring in stove wood so that she'd have fuel for the stove.
Okay, so you lived on a farm. At what age were you having to work with your dad and brothers on the farm, and what kind of things did you do?
I don't remember what age it was. I don't remember what we had to do, though. Probably foremost on the list would be we had to hoe the garden, and my dad believed in a huge garden. That was a major thing we did. But in addition to that, when they were farming the fields, they let the field lie idle one year and farm it the next year. But bushes grew up during the idle year, and my brother and I would have to cut the bushes and carry them to the edge of the field and throw them over the fence. When tobacco season came on, we had to set out the tobacco plants, and that meant bending over to put the plants in the ground. When my dad and my older brother plowed the corn, it was hillside country, and they would throw clods of dirt on top of the corn, and my brother Bill and I had to come along behind them and uncover the pieces of stalks of corn. We also, every afternoon when it came time to milk the cows, if the cows didn't come to the barn, we had to go find them and bring them in. We carried water from the well, not a well, but from a spring, which was about 100 yards away from the house. And this was all right regularly, but when my mom had to wash in a big iron pot, she boiled the water. We had to carry the water to fill the pot, the wood to build the fire under it.
Oh yeah. Okay. How much money would you get for some of the crops you would grow, like when y'all sold them? And yeah, you understand that one. I'll ask you that.
Okay. We sold tobacco, and I believe that's the only thing we sold.
Okay.
We sold some. We raised hogs, and we would sell the hams. And I never did know how much they got for the tobacco, but that was our money crop. Sometimes they would sell a calf and get the money from that way.
Did you grow all of your own food?
Well, pretty much. I don't remember what we'd had to buy. Probably, if we had syrup, we had to buy the syrup. We had flour to make biscuits. We had corn, which we would shell off the cob and carry to my grandfather's house, who had a grist mill.
And how far was that?
Oh, that was 300 yards.
Okay.
we'd get the meal for that. My dad, see, was kind of a good mechanic, because in addition to running his daddy's grist mill, he was a blacksmith. He had a hammer mill where they made feed for the cows, and he made some money that way.
Okay. Did you ever hunt or fish for your food?
I was too young. We moved away from the country when I was 11 years old.
Okay.
But my dad would go hunting for fur. He would kill possums and foxes and skunks and sell their hides
Oh.
and made some money that way. He was good at hunting squirrels and rabbits and quail, which we improved our diet. I was too young for that.
Where did you get your water from? You said a spring.
A spring, which was
And how did you keep your food or water cold? Did you?
well, when the water came out of the spring, it was colder than the air,
Mm-hmm.
and we would put milk, anything else we wanted to keep it cooler than it would have been if it was just sitting out. We'd put it in the water, the spring water, and it would cool it that way. When electricity came to the neighborhood, we didn't get it in our house, but my grandfather got electricity. He had a refrigerator, and we kept our milk in his refrigerator so that we'd have cool milk. We'd get ice from him.
What was school like, and where did you go to school?
School was like 3 miles from our house. We went to New Bethel School, which was a 2-room school, grades 1 through 4 in one room, and grades 5 through 8 in another room. And that sounds like a bad educational situation, but it wasn't bad at all. But I went through 6 years of that kind of schooling, and then moved to Ohio and took the 8th grade test to graduate from 8th grade into high school, and I scored second highest in the county in Ohio,
You did good.
which meant that my Tennessee education was adequate.
Yeah.
Talking about education, see, my mother was a teacher 1 year, or 2 years
At your school?
at our school, but there was a problem. She thought that anytime anybody did anything wrong that needed a spanking, she'd have to spank me first. And I think I got 20 spankings one day.
Oh no. Did your family go to church?
Yeah. We went rain or shine. I don't guess we went in the rain, but in the summertime it was hot, no air conditioning, no fans. In the wintertime it was cold. They had a pot-bellied stove, kind of sitting in the floor in the middle of the room, and my brother would go early and build fires in the stove, and they circled the benches around the stove, and where it could be warm. We didn't have a preacher. Preacher would come to hold a revival for 2 weeks in summertime, and that was fun, but it was miserable too. Because just think about sitting in one of those hot buildings, the tin roof, jam-packed with people. The preacher went on and on forever.
Really? How far was your church from your house?
5 miles. An interesting thing. See, the church didn't have Sunday school rooms. It was just one big room.
Mm-hmm.
It had about 4 classes meeting in the room
Oh wow.
all at one time.
Yeah. Did you walk to? How did you get to church?
What I remember is we didn't have automobile. we didn't have automobiles. In fact, most of the people didn't have. And my dad would hook up 2 mules to a wagon, and we rode the wagon to church.
Aw. Was everyone poor, so you didn't really know you weren't well off, or were there some people that you thought were rich?
Well, we thought that most people were richer than we were.
Yeah.
But things were hard to come by during those Depression days.
Did you ever get gifts for Christmas or your birthday? Or what would you get?
We had an aunt, a great aunt who taught art at Tennessee Tech,
Mm-hmm.
and she would always send us toys at Christmas time. At Christmas time, usually I had an uncle who would come to visit us. He'd bring oranges, which he didn't have regularly. He was a preacher in North Carolina. He came. He also would bring bananas. We always had banana pudding.
Really?
The reason for having banana pudding when he was there is because that's the only time we had bananas.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Aw. You didn't get that many presents, but did you have like a few things that you look forward to getting like once a week or once a month or something?
Not really. One thing that I think about, when this was before I was born, my sister was a young child. At Christmas time, my dad, I think, walked 10 miles to get her a doll
Aw.
that he paid 5 cents for. But that was quite good for her.
Uh-huh.
We always look forward to my aunt who taught at Tennessee Tech,
Mm-hmm.
because she would always send us presents, toys, balls,
Mm-hmm.
things of that sort. We look forward to that.
And you had kind of mentioned that on Saturdays y'all would go to.
Oh, there's a local store. See, we only went to town probably once a year.
How far was town?
Oh, if you went by the ferry, about 5 miles.
Oh.
But if you went around how you had to go if you didn't go to the ferry, it'd probably be 15 to 20 miles. But times were hard. We'd get a pair of shoes once a year.
Hmm.
In the summertime, we'd go barefooted. We wore bib overalls. Everybody did. Flour was sold in sacks with design flour patterns on them, and most of the ladies would make shirts for their boys out of those
Oh,
sacks.
really?
And so I had shirts made out of sacks.
Flower. Having been raised as a child during the Depression, how has that affected the rest of your life?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Because you don't know how it was to not be in the Depression.
Right. I don't really know what impact it had. I'm sure it made me less aggressive
Yeah.
in the financial world,
Yeah.
probably more cautious.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for being interviewed with me.
Was it long enough?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Hope we can hear.